If your team is using AI to make stuff, but not saving anything worth using, you're burning brain power for a one-time win. The most valuable AI workflows don't end with output, they end with reusable, intelligent assets. Welcome to Process of Elimination. I'm Justin L. Brown.
I'm Ryan Edwards.
And today we're breaking down how modular thinking can turn your smartest work into systems that run, scale, and sharpen itself over time. Sounds good?
Sounds good. And you know what your intro made me realize?
What's that?
That prompting is a lot like disco.
Oh, okay. Now we're starting off hot. Go ahead.
Because like you said, it's burning brain power.
Yeah.
Right? And disco, burn, baby burn, disco inferno. Disco was fun at the time, but we all look back at it and say, oh my God, that was such a waste.
It had to have its value at some point.
Yeah, in the moment it was fun. But we look back
Didn't disco help get us Thriller though? Like I feel like that first album was because of disco.
Yeah. But all I'm saying is
we're getting so off topic and way into a field of expertise that we are not a part of. So okay. So when we look at most teams and their AI use cases, how much of them do you think are actually using it in a way where they can get repeatable intelligence out of it versus a one-off output?
Most people, funny thing is, if you ask most people who regularly use AI, they'll tell you that they're using it in a way that is repeatable. But what they mean by repeatable is they're saving the prompts in a Word document and copy and pasting them over and over again. That's not repeatable. That's repetition. And there's a difference between repeatable and repetition. Repeatable, as you're talking about, is consistently getting the same output, not just for yourself, but across multiple people, a team. And it's really important because in today's world, your team might be a person in Los Angeles, 2 or 3 people in Los Angeles, a person in Boston, a person in New York, and a person in Peru. And so you need to have a process that is consistent in the output, consistent in the assets that come out. And that's what most teams are lacking these days.
If that's the case, then what does the mental shift teams need to go through when they're generating these one-time wins and building these systems that they rely on?
When you get a one-time win, and don't get me wrong, one-time wins are great. And prompting is just a necessary part of the equation, but it's not the entire equation.
Yeah.
When you get the one-time win, look at what created that one-time win. Look at what created that one-time win for you. And then you could take that, and sometimes it's as simple as saying, I got this result. I really like this result. Hey, ChatGPT. Hey, Claude. We did a great job together. Now help me turn this result into a set of instructions that I can use to create my own custom GPT that I can share with other team members. Sometimes it's as simple as that. Sometimes you need to build it out a lot more, particularly if it's a core business item that you're doing. Mm-hmm. For example, if you're a production company and you're doing a lot of scheduling, you want to build it out more than that. You want to build in examples. You want to build in use cases. You want to build in what a successful schedule looks like and what an unsuccessful schedule looks like to avoid. But starting out with, hey, this prompt worked out really well. This asset, this artifact, this document that we got from it is really good. Help me turn this into something that I can repeat in a customized way across team members in multiple locations. It's often as simple as that.
So I feel like I've done this actually quite a few times where I would go through an exploration and at the end of that exploration, it'll spit out a kind of almost like an Excel template plus a summary plus a bullet point doc. And it would have all the information that I need for a project. And I would ask it to give me a prompt based off of give me a template based off of what we just worked on, and it'll give me a whole templatized prompt that then I could take my next word, like my next document, my next exploration, and then put it up against this prompt that I just made, and it'll spit it out exactly in the format that I need it to be, and it'll pull all the information and collect it in a usable way that is repeatable for me.
A key term here is repeatable for you. Now, if you're working on a task, for example, if you're working in a team and your role is production on the team or managing the team, you have certain tasks that are specific to you. So you're going to want to create a system that is hyper relevant to get the output that you want.
Mm-hmm.
But then you have certain tasks that are shared tasks between you and an account person, you and a creative person, you and a few other people. Those tasks, you want to make sure that the output isn't just perfect and hyper personalized for you, but is hyper personalized for the team.
Yeah.
And that's like the first step. And I think we've talked about this before. The first step is understanding who is the stakeholder in the end product or the goal. Is it you? Is it the team? Is that's the context that you're working in. If it's you, you could argue it's not the most efficient way, but you can get by with just prompting.
Mm-hmm.
If it's a larger, broader team, you definitely want to have consistency, and you definitely want to look at moving past a prompt.
So what's the difference between a lazy template and a smart modular system?
A lazy template, look, and again, there's nothing wrong with lazy templates in the right context. I use them all the time.
Yeah.
In the right context. And you have to understand the nature of AI these days. AI is becoming more and more personalized. They're putting more and more effort to remembering my own use of AI versus your own use of AI. So if I put in the same prompt, if you share a prompt with me, I'm going to get a different output than you will from the exact same prompt because my prompting history is different.
Got
My
it.
context is different.
Yeah.
So that's what what you refer to as the lazy version, that's what it does for you. We can share these prompts, but it's going to give us different outputs. And you share that across 3 people, now you have a shifting deviation. I get a little bit of a different output, you get a little different output. Francis, behind the scenes here, gets a different output.
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden, that can be enough to have a major impact on us achieving our goals.
This makes me think of some of the note-taking summary. I'm going to be very specific.
Mm-hmm.
This makes me think of Gemini taking notes in meetings, but it's not based on any kind of back history on how these meetings would typically go. So if you and I have a meeting about our podcast, it's very different than me having a meeting about a production, and I'm going to need those notes to be summarized completely different. So when I think of a lazy template, I think of what Gemini is doing great, which is summarizing something, but it's not for a team that needs specific items out of a meeting that usually is repeatable. It would be great if we would probably take the template of that and then put it somewhere where it's into a custom GPT to give us proper notes that we can use.
And you just made me realize something. There's an important part of that definition that we need to speak about. You and I speak about all the time off the podcast. There's a difference between the lazy one relies on the information coming out of the AI, ChatGPT or Claude. A well-done one, an intelligent one, a structured one does that paired perspective approach, which combines the information coming from the AI, Claude, ChatGPT, with your experience, with your knowledge. That's when it goes from being the lazy one that can get the job done to an extent to one that's well structured, that is repeatable, usable, and is a foundation for a lot more success.
We definitely need that. I had to actually resort to just using transcripts, blocking those transcripts out to its most important sections, or just sectioning them off in general, and then taking those sections, putting it into a GPT, giving me my notes the way I like to see them, then putting all those notes together, serving them. It sounds like a lot of steps, but then if a meeting ends at 11:30, I could have my notes ready to go by 11:40.
Yeah.
based off of that. But on an enterprise level, it's how do people apply that? Because I know I have my system, and I know a lot of people out there have their own system by shadow AIing, but how does it work on an enterprise level?
On the enterprise level, the key here is to design a structure, for example, in a GPT or an agent in Copilot, they're agents, kind of the same thing. A little bit of difference, but for the sake of this conversation, they're the same thing. But we create them with enough structure that we know that they're going to be reliable and give us the same type of outputs, the same type of assets, and the same confidence in the structure and the level of quality that we expect, while being flexible enough to accommodate my style and your style. Let me give you an example, a real world example of what that looks like.
Okay.
Looking at Gemini, for example.
Yeah.
Looking at Gemini and looking at Google Docs and a Google Drive environment. I do a meeting and I'm using Gemini and I'm using the smart tools to look across Google Docs. Now, if I'm using that independently and you're doing it independently, mine might be looking only back at my documents created in the last 2 weeks because it knows that's what I've been focused on and is pulling information. Hey, here's relevant documents from that meeting from the last 2 weeks and pulling it into my documents. You may have been looking very recently back at a 3-month history of the project. And now it's pulling in that 3-month history, which has a lot more context and will say, hey, consider a lot more considerations. Now we have 2 completely different documents, 2 completely sets of action items from the same meeting because you were looking at it in a different context lately than I was.
Yeah.
If we have one structured document, in that structured document could be the instructions saying quite simply, look back at the entire history of the document and also look back only at the recent 2-week history. Now create 2 different outlines.
Mm-hmm.
One looking at the full history context, one looking only at what's been the last 2 weeks, and give me a third that's combined. Now we have that all, and now we're looking at the same page, and now we can compare my notes versus your notes, my outlook versus your outlooks,
Yeah.
apples to apples.
So people end up following this process that you just talked about, but a lot of them do it blindly. They don't know that they're following it, or they're following portions of the process. But this goes into our ideology drop.
Drop
And-
it like it's hot.
Drop it like it's hot. And we're going to start with basically what your next action would be and then kind of work our way up. So starting with prompt packs, we want to understand why it's important to have prompt packs. And we talked about prompt packs before. On its own, you're going to get too many variables. But let's talk about prompt packs in the context of once everything is kind of in the right place, what does a prompt pack should look like?
Yeah, prompt packs can be as simple as a Google Doc or a text document where you just collect your prompts into.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I get a little fancy. I use Google Sheets.
Oh.
So I can, sort it by the types of prompts I need. But, I'm a little bit of a outlier. Let's just call it that. I have roughly 300 prompts in my prompt pack.
Okay.
But the point of a prompt pack is to save the prompts that you use over and over again to make you more efficient. And to be really clear, most of the time, you shouldn't be using your prompt just copy and paste. You copy and paste it in, then you add a few lines of context here or there to customize it.
Yeah.
And I'm going to give you my hot sheet. My hot sheet that I love to do these days is I'll paste a prompt in, and then I'll use dictate. And I will just dictate in after the prompt saying, here's some more context. Here's what I'm doing today. Here's the challenge, or here's what's unique about this situation where we still want to use this prompt, but here's just a little bit variables here or there, or here's how this client's different. And that is just like prompt pack on steroids and incredibly efficient.
That's really great. So you have your Google Sheets, and this is goes into our next one, which is framework vault. And in this framework vault, you would have, say, a stack of prompts that are specific for tasks that you would normally do, whether it's like a campaign angle or a decision tree. Like, so let's talk about how you categorize your prompts to be able to at least find them.
Yeah. And one, I put them in Google Sheets and I categorize, like you said, I categorize them. So they're all about the different, like they're about strategies, they're about writing, and then they go into more detail. It is, strategy for consumer research, strategy for market research, strategy for, so I can easily understand and find them and nuance them. And plus, it's like, look, I'm older. I have gray hair. You're lucky. You're
Hey, it's getting there.
And I grew up in the time of Granimals. Granimals, Granimals match the animals. There was a great clothing line when I was a kid where like you had like a tiger and a tiger and you knew your clothes matched that day if you're wearing a tiger and a tiger or a turtle and a turtle.
Oh, this is great.
And that's how you knew your clothes matched for school. So, and the really cool kids got into, I'm going to match my tiger with a giraffe.
Oh.
Anyways, why I brought that up is that's how I look at the frameworks. I'll often use that to now combine prompts. I need strategy, but I need the strategy done in a narrative fashion. So now I'm going to use my framework and find a good narrative prompt. And now I'll pull both of those out and I'll combine them. And now I have a super prompt, or the framework allows me to combine 2 or 3 prompts together. And then I use that dictation for context. And now in a matter of like 2 or 3 minutes, I have a very comprehensive super prompt that if I start from scratch would take me half an hour to do.
Is there a way to make a custom GPT that can make your framework vault like a directory to find these prompts? This is not in our ideology job, but just made me think of it right now.
Yes, there is.
Okay.
Why, yes, there is, my fine friend.
Because what you were saying makes a lot of sense, but I'm thinking about once you're actually in the space where you need it, how do you go and find it efficiently?
Okay, and I'm going to nerd out.
Let's nerd out.
So I have a PDF. I've been doing strategy for 15, 20 years. I have a PDF of strategy frameworks. All the theories, all the formulas, stuff like that. And it's about 200 pages long now. I have loaded that into a PDF. And then I have loaded also into that, I have a pooling from my Google Sheet, a live pool into my GPT.
Okay.
So now what happens is I can prompt it and say, here's the problem I'm trying to solve. Only using what's in my libraries. Give me 2 or 3 of the frameworks that you think that are best to use in this situation, and give me 5 or 6 prompts that combine together that can help me achieve this. And then I look at that and I'll pick, hey, here's the framework that I like, or stuff like that, and here's 2 or 3 prompts that I like.
Yeah.
And then I'll use that to build it out.
Initially, this could seem pretty daunting to have a prompt library of 300 prompts, but for an enterprise, it could easily get to the thousands.
Yeah.
To be able to look it up, or at least have a way to call on which ones could be useful in building a framework vault in a GPT that you can call on is going to be extremely helpful.
Yeah, and part of that is there's a certain structure that I use. I just want to call out in this.
Okay.
I have that PDF that is in the instructions.
Yeah.
That is, here's the formulas that everybody in the industry uses. And I need to use these formulas. So in my industry, I'm right on, and I can apples to apples. If I'm challenged on my results, I can say I use this formula. It makes my output repeatable.
Yeah.
But then what I'm pulling in is my own personal library. So what you can do in the enterprise environment, and I'm using for that ChatGPT, so I'm pulling it from a Google Sheet. But if, for example, if you're working in the Google ecosystem, you can do the same thing, have an agent set up with those definitions for your company, And then each person can then have that agent pull in from their personal prompt directory. So that's where you get what we talked about earlier on, that structure that makes sure that you and I are working in the same formulas, the same context, the same definitions, the same frameworks, but now we have the personal freedom to adjust it to our own jobs and our own work style and our own methodology.
That's great. I'm glad we went on that slight tangent because it was a very important piece in our framework to build the vote properly. Moving to a voice block, which is your one-line intros, your call to action, variants, and your brand safe metaphor and phrases. So you have your framework, you have your prompts. Now you need to output this information. You want to have certain guidelines that are in place, whether it's your own personas, whatever that looks like, basically your voice on a personal level and on an enterprise level. How does that fit into that ecosystem that you were just talking about?
I fully believe, and what I've seen a lot of success for companies in, and individuals too, and personal brand, is you need to build a tone guide and a brand guide for both the company. A lot of times, if you're working in a larger organization, the team and yourself, for use with AI. The team and the company one should be used across the team and across the company. And then your personal one should reflect you. And you build that out, so it's repeatable. So either it's a prompt that you can paste in each time you use it, or you can pull it in. So it is consistently giving you the output that's right. And here's why that's really important.
Okay.
I don't care which AI, which platform you're using, if you're using Claude, GPT, Grok, DeepSeek, whatever you're using, they vary your tone.
Yeah.
And they do not keep tone consistency. And you have to keep reminding to, hey, use my tone. Here's what happens on a busy day. If you're at work and if you're using to write emails, you're using it to do research, stuff like that, it's going to do a tone shift on you eventually. And I've seen that bite people in the butt.
Yeah.
I've seen people come back and say, hey, why were you so, people get in trouble for saying, why were you so aggressive in that email? Or why were you so formal in that email? That was awkward. And you're like, oh, I'm sorry. It didn't mean to do that. I was just busy. I used AI and did a tone shift on me.
Yeah.
So use those guides. And it's not hard. It seems like a daunting task to create those guides. It's not hard to do.
Yeah.
Actually, if you look down, and we'll put this in the comments below, there's an easy link for a page on our site to walk you through that.
And you're right. You have to almost remind it, no M dashes. Use this persona. Do that. But then the more you do it, the more it becomes second nature. And then it'll just almost be like punctuation, where you know that a period goes at the end of the sentence, just like you know that a persona, a tone, and those elements go at the end of a prompt.
And what even makes it even more confusing for some people is if you're using, for example, ChatGPT, and you use it for your own personal use and you're using it for work use, now you're training it on two different tones. Particularly if you have a creative project at home that is very different than, for example, the way you show up at work.
Yeah. Is that the case when you're using custom GPTs? Because say you have a GPT that's specifically for work, you have a GPT that's specifically for a home project. When you're flipping back and forth between the two, do you find that those tone shifts happen less, more, or equally the same?
They should not happen at all because, and this is how we approach it, is we define as part of our, for example, a custom GPT or any agent structure, the use case and the appropriate tone. Business casual. This is, for my home use.
Yeah.
So and it doesn't have to be in depth. It can also be just one sentence.
Yeah.
But we define that to make sure those guide rails are in place.
For sure. One of the things that I like to do is whenever I'm working on a project, I try to keep it not only in the same custom GPT, but also in the same conversation. So that way it can follow along as much as possible and keep all that information from that library, not from a different one.
Off camera Francis, the voice of God over here, is a master of using projects to keep threads in conversations and email threads and stuff like that in per conversation type and per client to make sure that she's always answering the right client in the same similar way and fashion as before.
Got it. So you're using a custom GPT and you're using projects inside the GPT to keep all those projects together in the same place?
Oh, no, I answer?
Yes, now you
and
answer.
speak loudly.
Yes, I have a combination of project-based for each client. And then I also have a separate thread to assure that all my emails history can go back a year plus to make sure that I'm keeping on top of everything historically as well.
I need to dive into projects. I haven't really dove in there yet, but that's a great call out. And I feel like it actually goes into number 4, which is workflow snaps, which is where you would keep your brief builder flows, your content strategy loops, and your AI assistant protocol. So let's talk about workflow snaps.
This is where it all comes together, and this is where you unlock the power of using AI. Because it's like we've talked about before, one, not everything needs to be done in AI. Some things AI does better. Some things you do better. You need to recognize that.
Yeah.
Plus, you need to have visibility into it, not just to make sure the AI is correct, but to get those moments of insights, to get those moments of correction, to say, I understand why I did this. I didn't think about this. Now let's go down this other path.
Yeah.
And now you can prompt it back in. And that's why workflow snaps, it brings it all together. It brings it all into one unit. And this is where, like, you can go into a company can have 6 GPTs and they can have a suggested workflow. And you can get 2 different creative outputs, 2 different creative point of views from the exact same workflow, but they're all structured to the same goal.
Yeah.
Because you're using the same workflow. I can too. I've done a lot of work in the agency world, and I've done a lot of strategy, and I've led a lot of creative teams, not in doing the creative, but doing the strategy for creative. And with the workflow, it's a lot like launching 3 different creative teams, saying, here's the goal, here's the inputs, here's what we need, and here's the items. And you can say, go at it, and you get 3 incredibly creative different outputs, but they're all focused on the same goal. And they all achieve the same result in 3 different ways. That's what a workflow does for you.
So this brings us to number 5, and what holds all of this. We talked about how you have your prompt packs, and that kind of goes into your framework vaults. And once you understand where your prompt pack lives and you want to use them, then you start to pull from your voice blocks so you can make sure the tone and everything you're using, your outputting is right. And then from there, it goes into your workflow snaps where it is holistically living in like one of your major buckets. And then that is all being utilized from your agent loops. And your agent loops is like the master brain that's going to be able to pull and utilize, and it's your in and output of everything that you're doing when it comes to making sure that you get the framework and get what you're looking for out of it.
Yeah, I mean, exactly what you said. It's the master brain. It's the context that holds it all together. And I can sum up the value of an agent loop in this. You have 2 choices. You can spend, every time you want to do a task, you can spend a half an hour creating the context, creating the tone, put it all in, doing that prompt to get it right, to ask one question.
Yeah.
Or you can spend that half an hour or you spend that time and create an agent. And then every time after that, only spend a few minutes. That's basically what it boils down to.
It really is as simple and as complicated as you try to make it.
Yeah. And the beauty of the agents too is they're key to workflows. They're key to working in teams, even in a team of two, because I can give my agent to you and to a person in Spain and to a person in Thailand. And we can work with the agent. We can get the task that we need out of it. But again, it creates that confidence, that security, and that structure to know that we're all going to be getting an output that's repeatable.
Yep.
And an output that is working towards the goal of the company, the organization, the team.
The way you said that, it makes me think of using your AI, your GPT, your Gemini, whatever that is. If you're using it just as a stock plugin, then it's almost as if you're just bringing in this outside entity to come help do a quick task for you. And then as soon as that quick task is done, then they leave. But your agent is actually a part of your company or your project or whatever it is. It's an actual teammate that is there, that you trained up, you onboarded, you did all the necessary tasks for. So when I ask the agent to do something and then 2 days later you ask the agent to do something, it's holding the context that's necessary for our shared goals. So as great as all of these AI tools are, they're generalized for basically the world, where our agent is for us to use. And that is going to make it a lot more repeatable. It's going to make it a lot more useful, and you could trust it a lot more.
Exactly. And there's and the AI world is evolving. And now with some agents, out of the box, you can ask the agents to do a task on a schedule over and over again. So, if you have for one client, I have an agent that goes out once a week and looks at the competitive landscape and tells me what has changed. And gives me analysis on it, gives me an output on it, gives me, based on what my instructions are, all kinds of inputs on it. That was 5 hours of work a week that is now done for me.
So this week, we want to pick one piece of AI-generated work. An insight, a slide, a piece of copy, and see if this process that you went through is reusable or if it was just a one-time task. And if you want to start making more assets that are reusable or more prompts that will be usable, then that's when you bring in Camino 5 or bring in the team to be able to help you actually build out those processes for you. Next week, we're going to be talking about the great AI reorg. Why tools demand new roles and not just new tasks. Because if your org chart still looks like it did in 2019, it's already outdated. It is definitely outdated if it looks like 2019. So much has happened since then.
If it looks like it's 2019, but it's okay if your org chart can party like it's 1999.
That is true. That is true. Because
like it's
2019, we could party like it's before 2019, but let's change the org chart to 2025 and beyond.
Let's change the org chart, but you know what? I'm now inspired. Let's make a Prince cover band and change it to a party like it's... That doesn't work. 2019.
We'll figure it out.
Yeah.
Thanks for watching Process of Elimination.
Thank you.